were the fat, shaky hands. Don't be mourning, Jock, grumpy nose. Little wonder, you little wonder you.
Hi everyone, welcome to a very special edition of the podcast. That music leads us in nicely. That's the sound of David Bowie in 1997 and the time of his album Earthling. Bowie's experimentation with a new sound, heavily influenced by the drum and bass culture of the time, was just one chapter of great musical experimentation in his incredible life. Now, Ray O'Donoghue is Dublin's nighttime economy advisor, or the Nightmare, and he was part of a collective, Quadraphonic, who put on a secret Bowie gig during this period at Dublin's Factory in 1997. And Quadraphonic, from venues like the Globe and the Kitchen, especially the Kitchen, they brought that sound to Dublin's nightlife. And over several weeks, Bowie was around their events and the electronic music scene in Dublin more broadly. There's a lot of lore around this secret Bowie gig that we'll be getting into today. Quadraphonic, consisting of Ray, Brian Spallin, and Donald Scannell, not only did they bring the emerging talent of the drum and bass scene to Dublin, they released records on their own label. They had a great ambition. And as the Indo told their readers, to quote Forrest Gump, Quadraphonic is as Quadraphonic does, and it does a lot. At its most visible, it's a club that runs weekly in the Kitchen, the Dublin nightclub owned by U2. But it's also a record label that actively promotes young Irish talent. It's also a radio show, Insomnia, on Today FM, and they're involved in TV and radio production. There's a website, of course, where you can tap into the world of Quadraphonic. There's even a publishing wing. It's like a world domination enterprise that started in a suburban bedroom, but spread its wings. So many of the people that are mentioned in this story today, Brian Spallin, Buzz O'Neill, and others who pop up over the course of it, have remained around the world of entertainment and events in this city and beyond. And my thanks to Ray and to John, who organises the annual David Bowie Festival. The event raises money every year for a good cause, this year for Cancer Trials Ireland, so that's a very good cause, worth supporting, and it was nice to do a little bit for it. I should say there's a little bit of bad language in this one, so keep that in mind. Now let's get into it. Our story today is set in 1997 Dublin. I suppose we're going to need to have a sense of what the city was like at that time, the culture that Bowie was interested in, why he came here. But before we get into all of that, I think a good place to start any discussion on David Bowie is your Bowie. Like, what was your journey into David Bowie as a listener?
I think Bowie is just such an important artist, and we'll get into all the different nuances around that. But I think my first kind of memory is when I was about 7 or 8, Ashes to Ashes. That song, I just loved the song and the video. And it was like just kind of ingrained in your memory, you know, that great song, that great video. And my two brothers were older. One was 9 years older and one's 4 years older. And they were big fans. And one of them drew Scary Monsters. I think he did a big poster of it and drew it and put it up on the wall, you know. So it's kind of, I was only very young, so just, you know, knew the odd song. And then I think Let's Dance and that whole album and that China Girl, they were huge monster hits, 1983. So what, I was 10 or 11, you know. So all that kind of phase, but didn't really start getting into music until the kind of mid to late 80s. And probably bought Hunky Dory somewhere along the lines, and that was kind of still my favourite album, you know, but of his.
The Bowie gig that you were a part of is very different from the Bowie gigs people would have got a chance to see in different times. I mean, Bowie's visits here were initially quite rare. There was Slane, 1987. Extraordinarily, that was the first chance for the Irish public to see him live. Also on the bill were Aslan. Christy Dignam found the gig too big, a bit impersonal. The very opposite of the gig we'll be talking about today. Christy said, up until now, we'd been playing in venues where you could see the whites of the punter's eyes. Now here we were in a big open hollow where the nearest audience member was 20 yards away. I think what makes the story that we're going to be telling today about 1997 so interesting is that Bowie really was an act you didn't get to see in that kind of setting.
No, and I think that's, I mean, getting into, I know we're going to get into the story, but I think it was funny how it first came about. I want to play your club, guys. And it was like, how are we going to do that? You're David Bowie, you do Slain, and then you want to play, in the kitchen. So yeah, we'll get into how it all happened, but it was a strange kind of a scenario, and and it was like 250, 300 people at that show.
Bowie's secret gigs had happened before. Pat Egan recounts in his memoir a gig at the Waterfront. He said one mention on 98 FM was enough to have over 400 people queuing outside 2 hours before doors opened. That was 91. He'd done the Bag It In as well. So he was pretty playful in his approach, and he liked the idea of getting off the big stage, standing in the Hollow and Slane, and playing in a more intimate environment.
Yeah, well, he's that kind of guy, wasn't he? He wanted to do something different, and he didn't want to do a secret gig and then the super fans showed up. He wanted it to be the kids that went to our club night, So I think that's what the whole
do a secret gig
logic.
with the Foo Fighters and charge 99 quid a ticket.
Yeah. I thought about it for about a second. And then I was like, nah.
I mean, that gig sounds good too. The Bag It In. Ed Power wrote about it. Attendees at the Bag It In recall Bowie walking through the crowd, asking Uber fans for a cigarette light. It was a pinch yourself moment for those who'd secured a ticket, and also a signal Dublin was achieving international recognition as a cultural centre. So that's 6 years before the gig you were involved in, and Dublin is kind of on Bowie's radar in the 90s. What are your recollections of that kind of dance music culture in 1990?
I was going to say of that night. I was like, I don't remember much about that one.
But that it was a burgeoning scene in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
it was across all genres of electronic music.
It really was. It was. It was kind of behind London and the UK and stuff like that, because that all kind of came out in the late 80s, and I think in Dublin and in Ireland it was only kind of in the early 90s where things started really kicking off, and I was a kind of a fan of the Stones and the Beatles and stuff, and then I only got into with the Stone Roses and Happy Mondays and that kind of crossover Primal Screamy kind of thing.
But the Stone Roses were the gateway drug.
Yeah, well there you go. And Primal Scream at Elgo was really the gateway. I was like, oh okay.
Yeah.
Andrew Weatherall produced the album, so I think it was only that got us into kind of dance music, and then I was in London. I was at a hardcore rave club, which was kind of like the early Jungle, before Jungle, and Groove Rider or something was playing, and that was kind of wild. Well, I loved the energy of it, but I kind of forgot about it then for a couple of years until I started hearing it again.
In a period of 3 or 4 years, you go from the front page of the paper being electronic music is bad, children are on drugs, people are dying in nightclubs, to having a regular page called The Scene.
No, in the Herald.
Yeah, in the
and
Herald.
Then we were in the Face magazine about the Dublin scene, and Mix Mag, and it was kind of it started becoming trendy. And
this is the Bowie we're talking about today. This is Bowie 1997. I suppose the secret gig, the context of this gig. Bowie is in Dublin rehearsing the touring of an album that was quite divisive. Actually, you would have heard the album while you were waiting for us to come on. Earthling, I think it's a great album. It takes a while before you think it's a great album, but when you do, I think you really come to appreciate it. And I find myself in total agreement with the website Louder Than War, who said that Bowie was never going to be the Stones, working at the same rock and roll scene for decades. His daredevil approach to creativity meant that instead of hanging out with the ghosts of the past, he was running with the unmapped future. It's just a brilliant synopsis of David Bowie's career. This album sound, though, is vital to understanding how you cross paths with David Bowie. It really was an extraordinary departure, and it could only have happened at that time.
Yeah, I think he just decided he wanted to change things up again, and he liked what was happening in drum and bass and jungle and so on. But being completely honest with you, because I was very involved in this, I was particularly the DJ. It was Brian, partner, and Donald were, more the promoter side of things, and the kind of organisers. I was more the DJ music side, I suppose, at that time, or really getting into it at that stage. And there was a little bit of, especially with all DJs, London DJs, oh yeah, Bowie's trying to get you into our scene, mate. His album's a bit shit, innit? And that was the kind of attitude. It was like nobody really played
the arrogance
music.
Of youth.
Well, that was, and we were all a bit arrogant, going, oh yeah, I wouldn't play it in the club though. But I think it came about there was a night in Andrews Lane, and Brian Spollen, who was part of Quadraphonic, he was the kind of main, I guess, the promoter or more organizer kind of side of things, went out to collect Goldie. We had a night with Goldie. We'd actually Andrews Lane downstairs and upstairs.
And just for anyone in the crowd who doesn't know Goldie, could give a sense of his.
Goldie, yeah, he'd released 1995 Timeless album, which was, I suppose, the kind of breakthrough album that put drum and bass on the map in a way, as in kind of into the mainstream, to an extent, as much as it ever became.
I think his name now is Goldie MBE.
Yeah.
Such was his cultural impact.
He's still mad. I've met him a couple of times. I've met him a bunch of times since. He's still mad as ever. But anyway, in a good way. But I think it was Brian went out to the airport to collect him, as we used to do. There was no such thing as limos or anything like that back then. And Goldie said, "Oh, did David Bowie ring you?" And he was like, "What?" "Oh yeah, I was on the phone to Jimi Hendrix. I mustn't have picked it up." I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Huh? He goes, "Oh no, I'm not taking the piss, mate. I'm not taking the piss. He was meant to ring you." And he goes, "He wants to come down tonight." And he was like, "Bowie?" He said, "Yeah, he's in Dublin." So he was in Dublin for whatever. I think he was only here a few weeks at that stage. And lo and behold, he popped down to the gig. I think I was DJing upstairs. Actually, I don't really remember much about it, but I knew that he was. I think I saw him sitting on the stage, which I thought was a bit odd. Just kind of sitting on the side of the set. Nobody gave a shit. It was like nobody was like, they didn't even know who he was, you know. He was that old guy sitting on the stage, like literally. That's how unassuming.
One influential Dublin DJ said to me, "You can never do an oral history of that time because no one fucking remembers anything."
Yeah, and I was like, only doing my research do I remember it. So.
But I think we have to stay with Goldie for a minute, because I think it's really important to have a sense of him and how big he is. I mean, securing him for a gig in Dublin is a big deal. And he says about the music, it's part of the underground fabric. New York has hip hop. We have drum and bass.
Yeah.
And maybe like every great new culture, it had well established itself in Britain before it made its presence here. Everything seemed to arrive in Dublin that little bit later.
Yeah, no, it is, and we can't kind of own it in a way, because it was very much a UK scene, and it kind of went on to bass music and, you know, grime and dubstep. Do you remember that? That's a bit of a dirty word now, but that all scene. And I was actually at a talk as I end up doing these things and these panels and whatever, but I wasn't talking, and I was at it, and they were trying to get UNESCO what's the term
intangible
again?
Heritage,
intangible culture, yes, and get bass music or drum and bass, jungle, grime as an intangible, you know, because it's very much a UK thing, and from 30 odd years ago, and I thought it was a fair point. And then you don't lose it and then have no kind of
sort of,
you know.
The
marker.
first thing your collective hears about Bowie being in Dublin is Goldie telling you he wants to come down to the gig tonight.
Yeah, well, that was it. Yeah,
he's knocking around Dublin at that time,
and then he showed up, and then Brian was at the door, I think, and he pulled up. In a car and just got out and went, all right. And it was like Bowie. And then so Brian kicked off a kind of, you know, relationship with him straight away, because he was the guy in the door, promoter guy. And they, then he said, I loved your night. Can I come to another one? I was like, oh, okay. So we started like randomly calling him at work and stuff. And, you know, like, Brian,
David
Bowie's on the phone.
And
it's like, yeah, it's like, it's someone taking a piss, isn't it? You know, no, that's David Bowie.
These pictures are brilliant with Tracy Emin outside the Clarence Hotel.
Yeah.
Did they ever find that child? And one of the things I love about the story that we're telling today, there's so few pictures of this time.
No,
you know, there's
pictures.
Way more pictures of Clubland.
God, can you imagine how many selfies there would be now?
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Well, some people might remember Slate magazine, who used to go into nightclubs with disposable cameras and then print those horrible pictures the next week in their version of a Society's page and risk your job. But for the most part, people weren't carrying cameras around this scene in the 90s, which I think is a great thing about that time. Yeah. And it means everyone saw Bowie moving around Dublin Clubland, but if it was to happen now, I think everyone would try and get their moment.
It's funny now, because we even from like, we still have community of friends that, you know, were all around at the same time in the 90s. And we have this my wife now, actually, she had a camera, and it was like, wow. And she actually just took loads of photographs. But we've just these random photographs. We've none from that night because I actually hadn't met her by then. But yeah, we just have like, and it's hilarious when we find them, you know, but no one had photographs. There was no selfie, wasn't invented.
The Clarence Hotel with the Bang of Celtic Tiger office, Bono's Hotel.
Yeah.
But he's kind of all around town. He's seen
the kitchen was, of course, the basement
Globe,
the kitchen was the basement of the Clarence. So that was our residency. We were there every 2 weeks, really from 96 until 2000 thereabouts. Yeah. So that was the mainstay. And I mean, I have to say the energy then, and that's, people say, do you have any regret? I don't like looking back. I'm not nostalgic by nature, but when you look back at the energy that we had in that room every 2 weeks, it was unbelievable. Like, it really was. You could touch it, man. But no, it was well,
it was a Dublin young people didn't have to leave for once.
Yeah.
Which in itself was an extraordinary feeling, that you could try and make something.
We had all those, everyone from drum and bass, you know, Chemistry and Storm, Fabio Groove Rider.
In this 1990s milieu of kind of electronic music in Dublin, can you give us a sense, because it's very few, one of the problems in the city today is the absence of venues. Andrews Lane is now a hotel, for example. What is the landscape of where people are going to hear electronic music?
I think it was just that there was more regular stuff happening. There was weekly gigs, and there isn't as many as now. And I don't want to get into all of that stuff now, but it was, and I'm not going to give out about the state of it now. It's just more underground now. It was underground then, but there was more venues. There was more weekly stuff. I think what's happening now is people are saving up and going to their big one-offs and their big gigs and so on, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas much more community. God, I used to be in the kitchen 2-3 nights a week, and then we were in the Chocolate Bar, the Pod on a Sunday night, and then we'd be anywhere else. Re-Raw, Temple Theatre, I don't know, anywhere, all around the country.
Yeah, and Bowie was kind of all over that landscape while he was here.
He came along then.
It
was a weekender in the Globe, which was kind of mental that he came along to, because it was in Re-Raw and the Globe, and it was absolutely stuffed. And he came along to that, and we did drum and bass kind of evening in there, and he came and wanted to be part of that. And then he just came along to a few shows, and then he said to Brian, he said, "I want to play your club," and it was like, okay, well, are we getting into it now? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, that's not going to be very practical. So we had to kind of come up with a mechanism to make that work. And I'm fairly sure we just started in the factory as well. He was rehearsing in the factory, and we'd started a record label, Quadraphonic Records. And we were in the factory, and Buzz, who mentioned there somewhere, Buzz O'Neill actually had an office, and we had the same, me and him. Buzz was on one side of the office, I was on the other side. He was doing PR or something for a record label. And we said, well, why don't we do it in the factory? He was rehearsing there anyway, and we know the place. And you can't sell alcohol unless you have a license anyway. So we said we'll just give away free drink, and
brilliant.
Yeah. So we were not selling it. There was a certain logic there. So Beck's actually sponsored it, so gave us a load of free drink. And
so you're like free influencers.
Yeah,
free drink and sponsorship.
And then it was. We came up with a ticket that you had to, and we wanted, we wanted our crowd at the gig. We didn't want super fans. That's probably why none of you were at it. It was, you had to get the ticket at our night. I think I'm reading more stuff than I remember, being honest with you. But it was like the night before you got the ticket. I think it was like a week before maybe or something. But you got the ticket at our club night, and you paid a tenner, which you could buy 5 pints of Guinness at the time for a tenner. And
I just heard a woo.
So what's that make? About 30 quid. And then there was a phone number on the ticket, and you called that phone number on the day of the show. And I don't even know if they knew who the hell was going to play. They just, no, we're not telling you. But it's worth going, honestly. And they found that number on the day, and they showed up. But obviously the word got out or something, because there's a lot of people trying to get in.
Did you find yourself warming to Bowie? Because you're saying initially that arrogance of youth, who's this guy hanging around our scene trying to make our music. But when you're seeing him time and time again at different club nights in Dublin, it was obvious this was very authentic.
I was still a bit of an arrogant little bollocks, being honest with you. Like, I really was. I probably still am. So I've been an arrogant big bollocks. But I was a little bit just kind of, thought, he's cashing in on our scene. Honestly, and I was like, and I wasn't trying to run around after him trying to talk to Bowie, and I was just like, and genuinely that was the attitude. So, I mean, it took a while before I looked back and went, Jesus, that was kind of a big thing, wasn't it? But honestly, that was the attitude, particularly for me. I can't talk for the others, but I know Brian was dealing with him, talking to him, and all of that, so he just felt differently, but I was just kind of, whatever. And I thought his music was a bit shit as well, being honest. So I loved his music, but I just didn't like the album. And I didn't do what you did and listen to it loads of times until I liked it. But so there was a bit of that.
One place your memory may be letting you down is this idea that people didn't know who was playing. I mean, even in the press, in the lead up to it, we have this. David, your secret's out. For those of us who intend being at the party of the decade this weekend, pay attention. Ticket for Bowie's top secret gig tomorrow night will be available to the first 250 punters through the doors of Quadraphonic in the Kitchen. Obviously, as his new album Earthling suggests, Bowie has developed an extreme passion for all things drum and bass and has been an avid participator at Quadraphonic for the past 2 weekends. The venue remains a closely guarded secret. And then at the end, we have Buzz O'Neill, would only confine that it's a venue reasonably close to the city centre. Our advice is to start queuing now. So what Bowie wanted, I suppose, was a venue full of kids who love drum and bass music.
Yeah.
But the word was kind of out before, and there must have been a bit of a rush to get onto this. It's an imperfect system in that sense.
Yeah. Well, I just remember the night being really, the night we were giving out the tickets, there was a bit of a buzz about it. And it was, but it wasn't like crazy. Like, honestly, it wasn't like, 2,000 people trying to get into 200. It wasn't like, it was busy and I'm sure it was disappointed people, but it wasn't crazy.
It's all over the press. It's a big story. Tickets are a tenner. Capacity's 253. 100 people, but there's a sense of chaos on the night when it comes to pass. And you talk about the production manager, Charlie Hernandez, big man, roaring, "Come on, people! We did Madison Square Garden in a day."
We did the garden in a day. Were his exact words. And he started there was people there, that weren't direct staff, and one of the guys, Paco, who we saw in one of those articles, was with his girlfriend, and he goes, "Come on, everybody out!" And I said, "I'm DJing." And I was like, "Well, what are you doing?" "That's my girlfriend." "Get her out." So he goes, "Well, if she goes, I go." So the two of them went and left.
And in the milieu, in the mix, you end up.
I wasn't even supposed to be DJing on the night because I was helping organise stuff, and I said, "Well, then I loved the opportunity." Then I was like, "Well, I'll DJ." Yeah. So I played right before him then, and instead of Paco, who was, I don't know where he was standing at the gates of the factory or what, but he was gone, and that was how that happened, how that came about.
It does exist as a really bad quality bootleg.
Yeah,
I used to love the culture of bootlegs in Dublin. Within a day of a concert, someone was standing on the O'Connell Bridge selling a terrible quality tape. But this is the bootleg CD.
Did you listen to any of it?
You get it, yeah.
So he did like 45 minutes of drum and bass, and then did like 2 hours of greatest hits. Now, in fairness, that was amazing. I played right before him, and there was another guy, Nemo. I don't know even if he was there. And he was supposed to play, and he thought I was Nemo, and there was a huge razor on the wall, this big projection. He goes, "Cheers, Nemo." No problem, David.
In the arrogance and the swagger of youth, going back to that, what did you think of the first part of that? I mean, he essentially, as you said, plays a drum and bass infused set before pivoting to the classics. Did you at least now think he had earned his place amongst the youth of Quadraphonic?
Honestly, when he started playing the hit, it was just like, wow, this really is something, genuinely. And he played like all the young dudes somewhere in the set, and I was like, oh God, I didn't know he played that, that often. And like literally that was amazing. It was like, yeah, much better than the drum and bass stuff you were playing earlier on, you know. But it was amazing, being honest. And that's why I'm just wondering where is Gary O'Neill, who was supposed to be at it? He didn't show, Donald.
He probably couldn't leave the Harold House.
But it was. They played nearly 3 hours. And then I had a chat. This was kind of my attitude at the time a bit. I had a chat with a man in the dressing room. I was chatting to her for a while. So I was like, oh yeah, everyone. So did you talk to Bowie? What did he say? I wasn't talking to him, but I was talking to a man. It's like, she was really nice, actually.
In the lore around the gig, Brian talks about a fine story of a Garda superintendent arriving and wondering what's going on. The sound was too much for some local residents and others, clearly.
I don't know if that was during the live gig itself or it was before. I think it was beforehand, while I was DJing. And the guards would kind of come. One of them was called by a local TD or something, said, "What the hell is going on around there? It's illegal." And the superintendent or something arrived up and was like, "Right, what the hell's going on here? This is illegal." I said, "No, it's not illegal. It's a private party and we're not selling alcohol." We gave it away free. Sponsored by Beck's. He went, "Well, I don't know. It looks illegal to me." Started taking notes. And then Brian is like, no, it's not. No, it's a private party. I mean, there's nothing. We're not doing anything wrong here, apart from like, and then it's in the background. What the hell is all that noise? And then Bowie walks around the corner with Joe Elliott and Eddie Irvine and the man. You remember? It's like, oh Jesus, well I know him and I know him. All right, come on, enjoy the rest of the party. And he walked off, yeah.
Well, that is part of the story, and you can't separate the gig from the time, the Ireland at the time. This is Celtic Tiger Ireland, the height of it. Yeah. So there were celebs in the mix of all
There were celebs, and it was like, so one minute he's like, they're doing an illegal rave around there. And then next one, Jesus, your man Eddie Irvine, you know. I such a man from Dave Leppard. Oh, fuck it, you're all right, go on. Enjoy the rest of the night, lads.
Did it feel in that moment, in that kind of Celtic Tiger moment, that the scene in general is becoming a bit more commercial? You see flyers with Absolute Vodka printed on the top of them too, like the Becks and the like were moving in.
I wore my jacket tonight. I actually found this jacket only like 2 weeks ago or something. My wife found it and I was like, I found your old jacket. So she washed it and there's a Quadraphonic maximum drum and bass. I actually found 5p in it, believe it or not.
I mean, of all the things you could have found in your 1997 club and jacket.
5p from the late 90s. It was still in that pocket, believe it or not. Anyway, we used to have a jacket. This was funny. We got sponsored by Ritz. I know, yeah. And we all had these jackets, these kind of long jackets. Not this tent. This was the original jacket. But we had these long jackets with Quadraphonic and then Ritz. So it was awful. So I decided to get a black marker and draw over the Ritz so you couldn't see it anymore.
Punk rock.
And then everyone was like, oh fuck, I'm going to do that as well. So then, like week by week, we had about 20 of the jackets, the guy, the manager, the kitchen and other DJs. Then everyone started scribbling out the Ritz.
Like big money wanted to be in and around the electronic music
and then
scene.
the Heineken, in fairness to Heineken, they've always been there kind of supporting music, and they had the Heineken Weekenders, and actually I think one of them was the show in the Globe where Bowie showed up at, and they were throwing money at big weekenders and you could put stuff on and it was great. There's a lot of stuff all around the country. So I'm a supporter of big brands throwing money at music. It's better than throwing money at, rugby or whatever, it's like.
But in the context of why all of this matters, I just want to come back to this point. Fundamentally, I think this is worth teasing out. I think this is important. That ultimately this did prove, I mean, if you look at Bowie in Berlin, Bowie in London, Bowie in New York, he always embedded himself in what was local and real. And if he was going to reinvent himself, I suppose he wanted to do it in a way that seemed authentic. And it took all of you in your 20s a while to realise.
No, I know, and you have to respect that. But it'd be, if you think of an analogy, say, I went to Berlin now and I'm hanging out with a bunch of 20-year-olds going, I want to be part of your club. I'd say those 20-year-olds, who the fuck are you, So, and I'd expect that. So there was a bit of that. But you have to respect what he was doing. He was embedding himself within that scene that was a vibrant, happening kind of scene. And, he did hang out with Joe Elliott and Eddie Irvine as well. But, there's a lot of respect there because, he was just trying something different. He was like, and it probably didn't work hugely, but it didn't really matter, did it? Because he's such a long, huge career. It didn't really matter.
The Night, which is really part of the lore of dance music culture in Dublin for a couple of reasons. Going back to something we said earlier, the fact that there were no cameras there, I think, really contributes to the lore of the Night. But standing there watching Bowie perform under the umbrella of your collective, when Bowie leaves, there's work of a different kind to be done. I mean, minutes after he's left the venue, you're on your hands and knees, struck on the floor. You're brought down to earth pretty quickly that night.
Yeah, and basically we had got barmen that were supposed to be cleaners as well, so we were told. So, oh no, they'll serve the drink and they'll clean up after them. So they were supposed to clean the whole place. But at the end of the night, the barman said, "Right, we're off." And we're like, what do you mean you're supposed to be cleaning the place? No. So they literally walked out the door, and there was 7 or 8 of us were left to clean the place, and literally down on our hands and knees cleaning. And there was the main kind of rehearsal space where the gig was, and then there was a couple of smaller studios, but these were like dance studios, so it was like polished wooden floor. We literally had to get down on our hands and knees and polish the bloody floor. So yeah, straight back down to earth after the high of that gig.
This wasn't your last interaction with Bowie, it's worth saying. He was back in Dublin not long after this, and you ended up DJing before him.
That's right, yeah. And again, don't remember a whole lot about it, but I know I was asked to DJ again. That was in HQ, and I think it was 2 years later, 99. Seemed like. Yeah. And then, he I don't know if he asked for me now, that's a bit probably much, but, probably told people he did, but no, I ended up playing with him again, or DJing before him, and there was probably a bit more appreciative of who he was than that time.
When did the scene begin to peter out for you in Quadraphonic and for other nights? When did the city begin?
I think the whole club thing was still a good few years left in it, and that weekly club kind of scenario. But it started getting more and more into these one-off things and bigger events, and then there was the whole theatre license, and there was a lot of people kind of spoofed it with the theatre license. They were open until 6 in the morning. Spirit 2002, I think it opened, and they did theatre license. They could go till 6 o'clock in the morning, but then what kind of happened was the DJs that had created this scene or were part of this scene started DJing in like bars, because you were offered, like I remember I used to play in Traffic every Friday. It was €300 or 300 quid or 300. We used to play in HQ, £200, which was €254. But like, €300 now, back then was probably $1,000, for DJing. So it got too easy. Yeah. So the bars were paying all these good DJs to play in their bars, and they didn't pay in, they weren't paying anything else, and the places were stuffed. And what are the DJs going to do? Take the 300 quid or try and keep their own scene going? And then I think it kind of killed it off a little bit. But as I said, I'm not here to moan, and I don't want to moan, but it did. Then in the mid 2000s to late 2000s started, like, I remember then going from, Jesus, I used to play amazing gigs every week in, week out, and now I'm playing Beyonce to a bunch of pissed girls, It's like, what happened? You play, have you got anything I know? I say, I don't know what you know, but it sort of kind of went, that's what happened.
I mean, when you're a historian, people kind of use you to offload their stuff that they don't want anymore, that they might be interesting to you. And someone recently gave me a pile of Slate magazines, which was a great thing to get from that moment in time, kind of 2001, 2002. Yeah. And what struck me looking at the gig listings in Slate was just how expensive it became to go out. Like Jeff Mills DJing in Dublin New Year's Eve, and the tickets are like £35 or something. It's just unbelievable.
Then what happened as well, and I remember because I was a promoter, and I was a promoter on my own then from about 99, and I think after the shit hit the fan 2008 or whatever, it just went from you couldn't charge in to 30 quid or 25 quid in for your Jeff Mills. It's what happened was you then had to work with the venues. You had to go, look, don't charge in, but pay me to run the night, and you'll have people in. But it was just the bottom fell out of it, you know, because people, what was happening was they'd still save up and pay 80 quid for, I don't know, you know, big ticket event, or free. They didn't want to pay for the middle of the road, you know, the 25, 30 quid ticket. So there's lots of different reasons why that kind of died out a little bit, and you know, things change, and you know, cultures change.
In your role now, I like the way you talk about nightlife in Dublin, and you make the point that the nothing is happening at night narrative isn't helpful or true.
No.
I think that's really vitally important. It's very easy to go back to the 90s and say, wasn't it amazing? The scene that was there's nothing now. It does still exist. People are still doing their best to maintain a club culture in Dublin, but it's happening in very different terrains.
Yeah,
and it's been driven to the margins by the city in some ways.
There's little places like Tengu and Wigwam, and as you saw in the news the other week, you know, Izakaya, they're kind of more underground clubs now, but they have their own scenes, and they have small little scenes. So it's not dead. It's not, you know, like it was in the mid to late 90s or whatever. But this narrative, it really pisses me off, this whole narrative. Oh, yeah, so no one goes to clubs anymore. You know, it's easy for a 50-year-old to say that because they haven't been to a club in 30 years, you know. But it's not true, you know. It's just smaller. It's different. It's more diverse as well. There's more kind of, you know, gay clubs and younger people going to various kind of clubs. You know, it's just, it's there, you know, but it's just, the landscape has changed, as things do. But, you know, it's down to a lot of that. It's down to the one big off events and big, huge shows and your big Marley Parks and your big, you know, one-off festivals and so on, as opposed to weekly clubs.
But I suppose it also requires a rethink in our own relationship with clubbing culture, doesn't it? Think of what age Bowie is in the 1990s when he's knocking around that scene. And
he was my age.
He was ancient. But that point you're making about, you know, you haven't been in a club for 30 years. In other cities, it's perfectly normal to be in a club in your 40s or 50s. That's a cultural question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But you see, there's a bit of a resurgent now. You know, I know this is a historical podcast, but I only over the last few months talking to a couple of promoters and club owners, and they're saying the busiest they've been in years. The last 4-6 months. So,
was anyone present in the Bag It In?
Oh, were you at the
John, for the sake of the recording, I'd ask you to say it into the microphone because otherwise it's lost forever.
Yeah, I was at the Tin Machine gig in the Bag It In. I mean, it was absolute. Those who remember the Bag It In, everyone remember the Bag It? You're all too young.
It's great. Venue.
Anyway, it was the premier music venue in Dublin in the I suppose where U2 would have started up, well, you know, down the line and then to the Bag It. But it was a real, your feet stuck to the floor because the carpet was so embedded with drink and chewing gum and stuff like that. But it was kind of, it was...
it's great sound in the Bag It, wasn't it? I remember. I actually played, believe it or not, in 1990 I used to be in a band called the Bone People, and we supported John's band called Lord John White. 1990 in the Bag It In. Yeah, I told you that loads of times.
Right.
Forget.
But the Bag It In, say this was the stage, it had two very long wings, like, so it went down that way about 10 metres and that way 10 metres, and then it was quite short this way. But I mean, for the Tin Machine gig, I mean, it was just absolutely wedged because the word did get out to kind of super fans or whatever, so you had to, I think we were there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and queuing, and we squeezed in, but it was like just literally people were right up against your face. But and of course it was Tin Machine, which was probably Bowie's least lauded, even less so than the drum and bass. But it was an amazing gig. Like Bowie just wanted to be one of a band at that stage. So, and that's the way he behaved. You know, he was very. He just kind of. You had to walk. The dressing room is upstairs, I remember, so you had a good 40, 50 foot walk through the crowd to get onto the stage. There was no, like here, backstage. So he was mobbed before he got on stage, but he looked amazing. Like, I mean, he had that kind of, he had the tan and the stubble and all. Like, he was very sexy Bowie. In 1991. I think the one of the strange things, like that was 17th of May 1997. like the best time I ever seen Bowie was in 1997. Which month was the Olympia gig, Tommy? August. It was only like a few weeks later. Bowie played the best gig ever in Dublin in the Olympia. Like he played two nights.
That's right, yeah.
And it was in 3 hours.
Did he do drum and bass?
No, well, he did a bit, yeah, of course. I think he done the drum and bass version of The Man Who Sold the World, did he? Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it was amazing. Like, he was barefoot on the Olympia stage and he just was so at ease with him. Like, it's the best I've ever seen him, definitely. It was amazing.
Wow.
And that was only a few weeks later, so I told my brother that as well. I got the better gig.
I'm curious what you think, John, about that point earlier about the authenticity of Bowie, because there are many David Bowies. He did reinvent himself in extraordinary fashion musically several times over, but that each time he did it in a way that wanted to be rooted in what was fascinating to him at that moment in time. And for you with this festival, like you're celebrating, there's the David Bowie everyone knows, but there's these multiple episodes in the musical life of David Bowie, and I think they're all important, as different as they all are.
And well done to John, everyone, for doing a great festival. Honestly, he deserves a round of applause. And the team put their heart and soul into it. Well done.
Well, I play in a band called the London Boys, and we do all the 1960s stuff. That, like, I think we're the only band in the world that does that music, actually. But it's amazing. Like, I'm in loads of bands and I've been playing around Dublin for 40 years and all, but I love playing those songs because they're just, I suppose they're the pointer to the artist that he became, you know. But as a guitar player, the chord changes are unbelievable. Like, I can never remember them. I have to keep looking at the charts all the time before we go on stage because they're so complex and they're so not what you would expect to do, you know. So even in the 1960s, Bowie was like being a real shapeshifter, you know, so he's brilliant. But the drum and bass, I loved Earthling when it came out, so yeah, I didn't have any qualms about
I'll give it another
missing that gig.
I will, it deserves that.
I think it still sounds brilliant.
We have to end with that question of what Bowie means to you. I mean, Bowie's death floored me in a way that few deaths do. I think of Leonard Cohen and Shane MacGowan. The news of those people passing feels like a moment. And he'll always recall a moment in your own life. It was very rare, actually, when Bowie died, the way the news spread. A Vatican cardinal tweeted, "Ground control to Major Tom. Commencing countdown. Engines on. Check ignition. And may God's love be with you, David Bowie." It's not every day the Vatican sends a tweet like that, is it? But now, it was one thing when Bowie was alive and you were telling people this man played our club night in 1997. With the passing of Bowie, I suppose you must look back on this with renewed feelings. And when Bowie died, did you realise just how big a deal this was?
I think, like, my wife is a massive fan, really, you know, big Bowie fan, and our daughter, 17 now, two daughters, but the 17-year-old is a really big fan as well. She was singing Starman. We have a video of her singing Starman when she was 3 or 4 or something, you know, and which is very cute, but great. Dressed up as David Bowie. On her fancy dress, which the whole Z on her face and everything's great. And I think it took a long time, I suppose, for the enormity of it to sink in because, you know, as I said, I was an arrogant 20-odd-year-old, and, you know, probably still am an arrogant 50-odd-year-old, but, you know, it was really, we had a bit of an attitude, and then just the enormity of it, like, kicks in now that you go, wow, that was a moment.